This is my Thrustmaster T300 RS. Now I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff to this, but to make it easier, the first video that I'm doing on this is actually just going to be disassembling everything, so that way I don't have to show the entire process through all of the videos that I'm making. I can just reference back to this one. So if you're coming from a different video to see the disassembly, I'm going to have all of the timestamps throughout this video so you can see exactly what to take apart and then just skip to that section, so that way you can speed it up. You don't have to watch this whole video to kind of figure out what's going on. Now the first thing you want to do with this is turn the wheel upside down. Right here, there's going to be a little set screw, and it's going to be a Phillips screw. Now we're just going to start taking this out, and we don't have to take it out all the way. We can leave it in just a bit. So it's all the way out right now, so I'm just going to go back in 2 turns. Now I can use this set screw here as leverage to break this loose. I'm just going to pull and crack it loose. We'll just take that set screw out completely, and now we can just continue spinning this collar clockwise. Now it's completely bottomed out, we can just start turning the wheel. To back it out further, we can spin the collar a little bit more, and that's pushing the wheel right off. Now the wheel's completely off, the collar just stays there, everything's fine. So now to take the wheel apart, the first thing we have to do is remove these 6 2.5mm Allen head screws. Now when we take these out, there's going to be 2 different screw sizes. So now there's the smaller screw right here, which is going to go in the top and then the lower corners. And then we have the longer screws, which go on the bottom and the top corners. Once you have all 6 of the 2.5mm screws out, just flip the wheel over. So there's going to be 3 on each side, 2 in the casing, and then 1 through the shifter, through the hole, and then again on this side, 2 in the casing, 1 through the hole, and then there's 1 screw down here on the bottom. Now another thing worth noting is that the coarse thread, shorter screws go in the plastic casing area. The longer fine thread screw goes in the hole through the shifter. Now, worth noting is that if you're only changing the wheel, you don't have to take these 4 screws out. You only have to take out the 2 behind the shifter and the 1 on the bottom, because that's what attaches it to the wheel itself. These 4 screws on each side are actually for the casing itself. But we can take the entire thing off now as one piece, just pull straight up, and now just be mindful of the spring that's going to be sitting here and the D-pad. So now with those removed, the wheel is off. The last thing we want to do is just flip it around, and we can take out this Phillips screw at the top to remove the centering band. And there we are. Now this is a very small pointed Phillips head screw. And that's it. The wheel has been disassembled. So now we can put this to the side, and we will start taking the actual control unit apart. Keeping this with the buttons facing down, so that way everything's not falling out, we just start prying it apart, and then there's going to be a connector. So we can flip that right around, put it down, and then just taking this connector and grab it by the plastic and wiggle it back and forth to remove it. That can go aside for now. Right here, you can see that the buttons for the shifters have little springs on them. And we have 2 more Phillips screws in here, these silver ones on the bottom. Now we can take the PCB out, which is only being held in by these little pegs right here, so you kind of have to wiggle it off. Now these springs on the buttons for the shifters, they actually stay on, so you don't really have to worry about losing those. Now we have the buttons themselves. So we need to start taking them out, and all of these buttons are keyed, so they can only go in one place. All the buttons are out, and now if we want to remove the centerpiece, we can just push these clips in from each side, just working around. Now that they're all unclipped, we can just push the clip the rest of the way through. So now we have the little centerpiece jewel, which I have an ROG sticker on it because I don't really like PlayStation. Now, just taking a look at this here, my suspicions of this being repaired is correct, because this wire was actually pinched and there is bare metal exposed. So I'll have to repair that, because this is supposed to go directly under here, and I'm guessing it got pinched when it was being assembled. Now there are going to be springs in this, so be careful. Now once I get the first 2 screws out, I'm going to want to hold this and take the other 2 screws out, so that way it doesn't go flying away. There we are. And we have the 2 springs here for the shifter. Now I have seen people mod these to heavier springs, or you can do the magnet mod to give it a much more tactile click. We can continue disassembling by taking these 2 screws out underneath the springs. Now these screws are shorter and fine thread by comparison to the ones that I took out for the spring cover. You can take off the little hinge, and then the shifter just comes right out. And to disassemble the other side, it's the exact same process. Now, just looking at this here, this is probably why my shifter wasn't working when I first got it. This screw that was actually just completely out. That wasn't even threaded in. And then this screw here, I could actually put it in 2.5 turns. So it was almost completely out as well. So maybe if you intend on buying a used one, it's probably just worthwhile to take it apart. So that way you can clean up what's in it, because this has some kind of grease in here. That's interesting. The other side didn't have any of that. But I'm gonna clean all of this up and everything. But now that the shifters are completely removed, last we just have to spin this around and just pop these 2 screws out next to this PS2 port that's in the middle, and that's PS/2, not like PlayStation 2. I know that many of you kids out there probably have no idea what this port is, but was used many moons ago for your keyboard and mouse before USB became the standard. So that's it. We can just take this and we can just start pulling this all the way through. Now just take this connector, fold it back on the wires, and shove it through the hole. And I can probably contact Thrustmaster to see if I can get a new one of these, but it is only one cable that's pinched. So I can probably just cut this, solder it back on, and then just put a tiny little piece of heat shrink over top of it, and it'll be more than fine at that point. This is why you should always get to know your stuff. Because I got a good deal on this, but for who knows how long. Because this shifter was almost completely fallen out, and this cable has breaks in it that are just barely holding on. So now onto the motor assembly. These are all going to be Phillips. There's going to be 4 in the front for the bezel that goes around the hub. Now we can take this ring off, which will reveal 3 more Phillips head screws. Now all of these screws are the same length, so you don't have to keep them separate or anything. Now with those 3 removed, we can flip it over, and we have all of these Phillips screws along the side. And again, these are all the same screws. Now with all of those screws removed, we just flip it back over, and we just kind of slide it forward. So we like lift up this portion on the back, and then just kind of slide it forward. There we are. So these clips right here are what's holding on and why you gotta slide it forward and off like that. Now we can just put this piece aside and we are into the motor assembly. Right here is the cooling fan, and people have said that they have overheating issues with this. I have not experienced it, so it's not like a big thing for me, but with that in mind, I am going to do preventative maintenance, and I'm gonna be adding auxiliary fans into this so that way I can keep this a lot cooler and just avoid any future issues. So if you have come here from that video, then at this point you can head back because there's nothing else to cover in this portion. But for now, this wire right here was also being pinched by something right in here in the casing, so I'm gonna have to try and cable manage this a little bit better to reassemble it, because a lot of these wires seem to be getting pinched from whoever had this apart in the past. Here you can see the motor assembly, which we'll be taking out for the metal gear and bearing mod to make this belt roll a lot smoother, which in turn will create less load on the motor because it's doing less work, which will keep temperatures down and keep the entire thing functioning a lot better. So if you've come here from that video, then you can head back to that video and we'll just continue on from where we're leaving off here. Now at this point, there's not really anything else that you need to be taking out for any kind of consumer modifications, like replacing the grease in here if absolutely necessary. So you can see that turning it all the way to the right will bring it all the way forward. So if you wanted to put grease in those gears there, you could. And then steering it all the way back will expose the gears on the front. And you don't need a lot, just a little bit, kind of put it in there. That'll be more than enough. So you don't really have to take apart the entire thing to actually do that. But that's basically it. That's how to take apart the Thrustmaster T300. So that's for the RS or the GT model. These are both exactly the same. The only difference is the GT has a Gran Turismo logo in the middle of the wheel, PlayStation logo here, and it says T300 on the side. So if you're using this on PC and you want to save a few bucks, get the regular RS model. It has less PlayStation logos on it, which is cool. Unless you're into that kind of thing, then why would you be playing on PC anyway? But I feel that this is the best bang for buck. It is the cheapest force feedback 180-degree wheel that you can get, so that makes it significantly better than any of the Logitech ones. You want to skip over all the Logitech stuff altogether just because those are 900-degree wheels, and this is a 1080-degree wheel, so it has just a lot more versatility in terms of a real-life driving experience, because this wheel will turn further lock to lock. This is also the cheapest belt-driven wheel, which is a lot quieter and a lot smoother, so you're going to have much better feel, more increased force feedback. It's a lot quieter. It has significantly more modifications for it. The Logitech pedals have much more customization compared to the standard Thrustmaster ones that come with the T300, RS, or GT. Logitech pedals are better than both of those options, and they make little adapters to hook the pedals up directly to this wheel itself, so that way you still only have one USB cable going into your computer and everything is connected. If you're just getting into sim racing, T300 is where to go. Well, the Logitech feels like a toy by comparison to this. This feels like equipment that you're actually going to get somewhere with. The Logitech feels more like an arcade kind of toy, super cheap, even though this wheel isn't as good of quality compared to the Logitech one because they're leather wrapped. There's more options for this. It still feels like higher quality gear. I don't really know how to explain it, but if you found something useful here, then like the video. Feel free to subscribe if you want to continue watching videos like this or just other technology related things. You can join the members program if you want to help support this stuff, so that way I can start pumping out like more expensive videos sooner, or, you know, don't do any of it. I'm not telling you what to do.